We're in the middle of a series called Character Under Construction. And the first week, we talked about what is character. And this is how we defined it. And I was using the book by Andy Stanley called Louder Than Words, The Power of Uncompromised Living. But he defines character as this. Character is the will to do what is right as defined by God, regardless of personal costs. How many of us in our lives have wanted to do the right thing, but we just don't? Ever been there? Where Dirk preached a sermon at Third Step one time. I told him to dust it off. I might have him preach it someday. Where you remember when Paul says, I desired to do the right thing, but I find myself just not doing it. We're sitting there, we're making a decision, and we know that's the way to go. And we go, well, this path over here looks like a good idea, even though we know it's not. And so today I want to talk about some of the ways we can start making better decisions, living holy lives. And part of that is when we start to control and guard what we put in to our lives. Because isn't what we put in eventually what will come out? Whether we think we can hide it or not, eventually it comes out. So I have realized that if I eat Oreos every day, that my dresses will no longer fit me. Right? And yes, some of us have been there. And I tried on a dress yesterday and went, oh dear. What I've put in is now showing. Right? We've all been there. Well, I'm not saying I got fat. I'm just saying my dress got smaller. Even for those of us who are slender, we still sometimes things don't fit right. Because I have this habit of at night, I have a snack bag. Right? Yeah, my children are threatened if they touch my snack bag, and I eat my snacks. See, I get away with it longer because I like to go to the gym. But eventually, what I put in comes out, okay? And I'm not talking just about food. What do we put in our minds comes out eventually. And I have shared this before. I shared it last week, that I tend to dwell on the negative. And so what comes out is my spiritual gift of whining. Right? Because if I put in all the negative, that's what comes out. And, I shared with you, I have chipper, happy people in my house who tell me, well, just find the good stuff. Like, Collene, just name 3 things that are good, and then maybe what would come out would be better. But I don't like to do that. Because I like to whine and complain and use that gift that God did not give me. This is one I've chosen to pick up on my own. I don't think it's in the list of spiritual gifts, but I've decided it's one because I've perfected it and I'm really good at it. But isn't that true? What I put in is what I put out. And the reason I put out negativity sometimes is because I dwell on the negativity. This fall, I know that you all think that I sit at home watching Cornerstone TV all day. But I don't. And so I have my DVR set to my favorite shows, and when I get home, I watch all my favorite shows. And the season premieres were coming in September. And I felt like the Lord saying, Collene, you need to stop watching this particular show. And I was like, but if I do that, I won't know what's going on. God has not called me to give that up yet. Shoot! Conviction from the pews. It wasn't a reality show. It was a, network TV show, and I was like, oh! And so I went into the DVR and I clicked delete, and guess what happened? I survived. I gave up the show and I survived. And then this week I discovered that one of my canceled network TV shows got picked up by Netflix. And I was so excited. I didn't even know how to find Netflix on the cable TV, but I was like so excited. And I got to episode 4 and I realized things that they cannot put on network TV, they can put on Netflix. And I went, whoa, fast forward. My eyes, right? It really was innocent. It did not click in my head that it might not be quite as clean as it was on the networks. So, right? So these are things that maybe we should be looking at in our lives, because what comes in will come out. And God tells us in his word that we are to guard and protect the things that go in our minds. What are the things in your life that you keep hidden from others? What are the struggles that we would be too embarrassed to talk about? We all struggle with something. And there are times when it takes us a long time to get past that struggle, but there will be things in our lives that we need to do to protect our minds so that we stop doing them. So today is kind of this call to holy living. These are the things that help us to have character in our lives, because once something becomes a thought, it becomes an action, right? This is how we get into trouble. So we must learn how to guard our hearts. And what does that even mean? That's kind of a churchy thing that we talk about. Guard your heart. Guard your thoughts. What does it mean? It means protecting ourselves, putting things in that are holy and good and lovely and worthwhile, instead of all the garbage that we can expose ourselves to. Now, we live in the world, and so then it's hard to avoid it all. But we must make choices about what are the things that will help me live a more holy life. I want us to go to Proverbs 4. I have several scriptures today. Only this one is on the screen. But Proverbs 4, starting at verse 13, says this: hold on to instruction. So what does that mean? Those of you who have ever had little ones in the house, haven't you tried to instruct them? Right? We try to instill things in their lives and give them instructions on how to live. And if you've ever had little ones at home, you know that some of the first two words that they learn are what? No and mine. Right? But we still try to instruct them, because this is how we help them grow up to be responsible adults. And I will never forget the first time that Alexa tried to play Dirk and I off of each other. You've ever had your kid try to do that? But she was not quite smart enough to do it without the other one in the room at the same time. She was this little itty-bitty thing, and she looked at me, she goes, "Mommy, can I have a brownie?" And I said, "Honey, you can't have a brownie." And now I would never really allow you to have a brownie because it's bad for you. And probably all of us shouldn't eat all the brownies. One of the brownies, maybe. But I see her turn right to Dirk and go, "Daddy, can I have a brownie?" And I remember I looked at Dirk and I said, "Did you just see that?" Yeah. She was just she just didn't realize, I should wait until Mom leaves the room before asking for the brownie, because he probably would have said yes. So this is what God is saying. He's saying, hold on to my instructions. And we say, well, we've grown past that stage of being little kids that go no. But how many times did God tell us to do something and we go, We treat it as if it's optional. So hold on to instruction. Do not let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life. Do not set foot on the path of the wicked or walk in the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go on your way. How many times do we know we should avoid something and we just keep going right at it? They cannot rest until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep till they make someone stumble. They eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. We get in trouble when we let our eyes go off the path. So how do we guard our thoughts and our minds and our hearts? First, we need to stop believing everything we think. Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? How many times have we convinced ourselves that what we're going to do is okay? It's a little sin. Because they're ranked in the Bible, you know. Don't we do that? We rank sin. Well, my sin's better than yours. So as long as I'm not like you, then it's fine. As long as less people know about it, then it's fine. What we start to think is how we behave. And many of us have told, or all of us have told us this at one time or another, we wouldn't do the things that we do. We have convinced ourselves that our behavior is acceptable. It's not that bad. Now, what happens when we convince ourselves that that one little thing is not that bad? It snowballs. And the next thing we know, we have an addiction, a habit, a problem, a relationship that just fell apart because that one little thing that I thought was no big deal led to this, because it veered us off course. It is amazing the ability that we have to lie to ourselves. We convince ourselves that our behavior is fine and sometimes even godly. Here are some of the ways that some of the lies that we tell ourselves. You can find this in this book. I don't like to take credit for things I stole. So in this book, he gives a list of lies that we tell ourselves. The first one is that I've always been this way. Well, guess what? We were all born with some struggle, with some tendencies. So there are some things that I can do because I don't struggle with that you can't, and vice versa. Okay? If I walk into a place with alcohol, it's not a problem for me because that's not my issue. I have others. Okay? But for some of you, you can't do that. There are other things that I can't do that you would be okay with because it doesn't lead you down that path of destruction. We all were born with a tendency toward sin. So we can't go, well, I've just always been this way, so oh well. That's not holy living. Secondly, lie we tell ourselves, well, everyone else is doing it. If we did everything everyone else was doing, we'd be in evil all the time. Because we live in the middle of evil. I can handle it. Ever tell yourself that? I can handle it. It's fine. You know, that one inappropriate conversation I had with, someone other than my spouse, it's no big deal. It just happened one time. I can handle it. Next thing you know, you have a big problem in your relationship. And you can go back to that moment when you chose the wrong thought and the wrong behavior, and now you have the wrong outcome. It's just one time. How about nobody will know? What are the things that we keep hidden inside? Things that would cause you shame if people found out. I want you to think about those things because we all have those things. I'm not going to ask you to publicly confess them here today, but I hope that you'll acknowledge it today and say there are some things that I've been putting into my life that are preventing me from living holiness, preventing me from being a person of character because my inside and my outside doesn't match. What are the things that you're putting into your life? Scripture in Proverbs 4 says, pay attention. Hold on to instruction. Turn away from evil things. In order to turn away from evil things, we must know what is evil. Right? And even the church today is trying to twist the definition of that. But just as I said at the beginning, we define what is true and right by what God's word says. And you can't figure that out unless you're in the word. And this is, gosh, we have every excuse in the book for why we can't open that Bible. And there were days when I would skip or I did it just because it's one thing to check off my lists, and I like check marks on my to-do list. Makes me feel good. And the Lord has really convicted me to have better times, and I'm learning to just have, I haven't gotten this, I don't want to act like I've gotten this to perfection. I have not, but the Lord has really given me much sweeter times with him. But after much conviction. I don't learn lessons very well the first 100 times. But I'm trying. Actually, one thing that God has really been helping me to understand in a new way is the book of Genesis. So I think we might be taking some of the summer to look at the book of Genesis. It has 50 chapters, so we'll be here for the next 50 weeks. Secondly, be careful what you put in. Are you careful about what you are putting into your mind? Because what we put in eventually comes out. Philippians 4:8 and 9 says this. Brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Do you dwell on the things that are lovely and pure and holy? I like to dwell on the things that are bad. And the chipper people in my house, Alexa gets up in the morning and goes, I am living my best life. And I'm like, go away. It's too much. I have not had a pot of coffee yet. Right? I mean, some people, she's just, some of it I can blame on personality, but again, God's like, you could dwell on what is lovely and pure and holy and great. You could choose that. You could look at that, and I'm like, but I don't want to. I like practicing this spiritual gift I've given myself. Do we think on these things? We are to learn and receive and hear from God and then put it into practice. God has not modeled for me whining and complaining. And yet that's what I like to, I get down in my prayer time and I have all these things that God needs to do. I've shared this before. I'm sure God's like, oh, not her again. Colossians 3:1-11 says this. You have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. How many of us dwell on the earthly things? God wants us to set our minds on things above. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Do any of you have something that should be put to death? And then he lists us the things that we should put to death. Things that belong to your earthly nature. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived. See, we're supposed to be past that, right? We're supposed to put that to death and move on to what God has called us to. Now you must rid yourselves of all of these things, including anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Can we dwell on the things that are lovely and holy and pure when we are filled with rage and anger and unforgiveness? Because that becomes what we think about. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge, in the image of its creator. So what are the things that you need to put away, put to death, and put in order to put on the things that are true and noble and right and lovely and holy? Are there things in your life that you need to put to death? What are things that you're putting into your life? What are you watching? What are you reading? If I came to you and took your phone away, all the teenagers just went pale. My phone. If I took it away from you, would there be anything on your phone you wouldn't want me to see? Because the phones are great and technology is great, and I love my Facebook and all those things, but it can be used for a good thing, but can it also be evil at our fingertips? And it's much, much easier to hide the secret things now. We just hide it behind an app. What are we feeding our brains? You know, one of the things that has become super accessible is pornography, which just distorts the mind. One of the hardest addictions to break, and we can just literally right there in our hand. Do you remember the little song we used to sing in Sunday school? I won't sing it. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little ears, what you hear. Be careful, little tongue, what you say. Be careful, little feet, where you go. Be careful, little mind, what you think. Our thoughts determine our actions. And some of us fill our thoughts with a lot of dark things. And it's preventing us from having godly character in our lives. So some of us, and I include myself, some of us have to clean house. Colossians 3 goes on to say this: therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with these things. Get rid of the stuff I just listed, the anger, the malice, the evil thoughts, sexual immorality, and replace it with these things: compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Start looking deep inside of your life and acknowledge what are the things that I need to put off, to put to death, to put behind me in my old life. Many of us have been doing things for so long that we haven't even recognized that it's wrong. Right? Don't we do a habit for so long that we just go, oh, well, it's just part of who I am. And God says, for you to be holy people, we need to put those things aside, put them down, and don't pick them up again. We do this too, don't we? Play this game. Well, I'm going to give it to God. Oh, going to pick it back up. Part of being a Christ follower is laying aside our old ways and picking up the new. So some of us need to acknowledge some things in our lives. Maybe we need to write it down, confess it, finally say, okay, Lord, I'm willing to finally admit that this thing in my life is not what you want for me. We're all there in different places in our lives. What is the thing in your life that if I were to look deep down inside your life and pull that out, that you would be like, uh-oh. You know, I'm constantly looking at my life going, is there things in my life that if someone found out, I could, be fired? And what are some things that I need to clean up? What would embarrass me? Do you need to delete some things from your DVR? You'll survive. You will. It will be okay. Remove some apps on your phone. Places you need to avoid. People you might need to take a break from. Not your spouse. That you need to just work on getting better. Can you examine your life and go, okay, what are the areas in my life I'm overly sensitive about? I'm a little sensitive when they tell me to stop whining. What are some things that are temptations for you? All of us struggle with different things. What areas in your life cause you fear? And then begin to replace them with something new. Replace the old things with worship, time in the Word, investing in things that will grow your relationship with God and the people around you. Join a small group. I know that some people in the church have asked other people, would you be my accountability partner, my mentor, someone I could meet with once a month and just share some things in my life. I met with two other female pastors on Thursday. I have a pastor's group that I belong to, but I don't always share a lot in that group. It's a big group and it's mixed company. And so this other woman came to me and said, I'd really like to have a group with a couple women where we just get honest with each other. And that's a scary place because it means I have to be honest and vulnerable and admit some stuff that you don't want to. And I know that next month they'll ask me, how'd you do with these things? So we met just this past week to kind of discuss some of the things that we'll do together. And it's you're kind of laying yourself open. Here are some of the things I struggle with. Ask me about these things. And so it requires a bit of vulnerability. But what are some things in your life that are causing you to have your insides and your outside not match? That if it came to light, would be shameful. We can put those down, give them to God, and He can allow us to walk in freedom, free of shame, free of the burden, free of beating ourselves up. We don't have to believe the lie that, well, you're just too much of a loser, so keep doing it. We serve a God of restoration and transformation who will help us in these struggles. And sometimes we'll need to get more help. Sometimes we have things in our lives that just require some other people to come alongside us and cheer us on and help us when we fall down. But what is preventing you from having holy thoughts, a holy heart,